Hello, everyone. My name is Al, the owner of Academic Composition. I'm here with John Packer, one of our main writers. He's been with us since 2015. He has it all: experience, versatility, academic ability, and a profound understanding of this business. He's dealt with all kinds of clients that we've dealt with. Mary is our academic consultant. She is a teacher with a variety of tutoring experiences, and today we will look at education from 2 points of view. John's point of view, being down in the trenches, actually dealing with academic writing requests, dealing with professors, and then there is Mary's perspective. What is it like to see things from the other end? So, Mary, tell us a little bit about your academic background.
So I've been a science teacher for 12 years, and then just recently moved into higher education. And my experience as a teacher is I see students interacting in the classroom and in the high school, and I know what they're capable of. I know what students are capable of from their interactions. However, when when students would submit their work, I would notice that the writing was not theirs. For whatever reason, it didn't sound like them. It sounded like somebody else was writing it. And so I my observation of academic composition is that it's very much it looks like a human being wrote it, like the student actually wrote the paper instead of AI, a friend. There's no grammatical errors. It's a very different writing.
And John, how often have you had situations where a student comes to you and says, I'm afraid the teacher will know. I'm not a good writer. How do I get away with this? What do you do? I mean, one thing I tell them is that, well, you don't have a style. You're not Shakespeare. So the only way I could imitate what you call style is to write with grammatical mistakes. So we're not going to do that. So how do we make it seem like students' own writing without making all the mistakes that characterize their writing?
Yeah, it happens quite often where they say, I don't want anything above a C plus, make mistakes on purpose, write like I do. This is what I wrote before. Can you mimic this? And it is a challenge because you want to tell them, yes, we can do that. In reality, we can't write like someone else. We're writing based on the instructions and based on our own knowledge and how we write. So we can what they would call dumb it down, or we can say what we're going to do instead is use your thoughts and ideas, create the paper based on what you want to develop. Ask them for some bullet points. Maybe if it's a paper based on their personal experience, for example, let's integrate their personal experience. And then if it gets to a point where they say, wow, this is too good, or it sounds too professional, or the teacher's going to know it's not me, we say, well, tutoring is not a problem. So if it ever got to that point, which 99% of the time it wouldn't, you can say, I got some online tutoring, or I went to a private tutor, but it never gets to that point. That's one element that repeat clients get past, because the initial concern of getting some help with their writing subsides very quickly once they realize they were overthinking it, and it's better to turn into quality paper than a dumbed down or a mistake-ridden paper. So get past that pretty quickly.
I've been in this business since 2009, and I remember dealing with cases like this so much more frequently shortly after the financial crisis in the first few years in the industry. I've seen more professors who actually got involved and questioned students. But of course, our clients never had a problem. All they had to do was just not admit to any wrongdoing. Now, John, have you noticed the difference that now professors just care less in these kinds of instances where the student gets questioned? It just doesn't happen anymore like it used to a little over a decade ago.
It's almost non-existent now because we've seen major changes in education from upper high school, junior, senior year, through higher education. When I was in high school, I remember a site called schoolsucks.com came out, and it had limited papers on there, maybe, I don't know, under 100. And students would just start turning these in randomly. The paper was on history, and it would talk about George Washington and Lincoln, and they turn this in when it had nothing to do with their assignment. The teacher would always say, what is this? So then when I got to college, that's when Turnitin and real plagiarism started emerging. And now the teachers could actually submit and check the internet for these. And so if you were copying stuff from Wikipedia, they'd be able to tell. And then Turnitin got more advanced. Now Turnitin is checking other students' papers, and SafeAssign comes out and does the same thing. So now they have that tool, and they say, well, this was turned in last year, and you turn it in again. And now we're at AI, and AI complicates it tenfold, because not only is AI detectable by the human eye, it's detectable by Turnitin. And there is embedded code in AI. I think a lot of people don't know this. There are embedded codes by ChatGPT and the other AI writers, where if you copy something from there, put it in Word or put it in Google Docs, go ahead and change 40% of the words, and now you submit it to Turnitin, it's going to say the entire thing is AI. They don't know that. They think, okay, I can change this around. But the teachers are sending it to Turnitin. It's saying it's AI, and they're going to think it's AI. So we've seen that major transition from schoolsucks.com to now AI. So back to your original point, the teachers don't have time to question students about their writing. If it's a foreign-born student in their first year in the United States, and they're writing, perfectly, the teacher might think, well, this is peculiar. However, they don't have time to sit down with that student and say, okay, did you actually write this? Because for one, they don't care. The work is done well. And for two, they have too many other issues with plagiarism and AI to worry about. They're running 40, 50 papers through Turnitin. They're not going to go question the student about their writing style or it being too good, as long as it passes.
Now, Mary, how do you see it from the other end? Have you ever had a student who obviously was not academically capable, and then they're writing like a Rhodes Scholar? What are you supposed to do? What do you actually do?
What we actually saw on the teacher side is exactly what John described. The students would have an AI generated paper, and they would go through and change keywords, but the keywords didn't make sense. And so, thinking from an academic composition side, it would have been more beneficial to have an actual person helping with that paper rather than AI, because they can know which keywords to change, I guess, or make it exactly like John said, more their personal experience. From the teaching side, from high school and a traditional school all the way through high school, John's correct. Most teachers don't have time to check. They have time to run it through Turnitin. They have time to run it through some other AI checkers, and then they got to move on. They've got way too many students on their caseloads. It's very difficult to check for that type of thing.
And Keith, you're a professor yourself. I remember you telling me a colorful story about that one time when one of your students found your paper and took credit for it, and she turned it in for your class. What did you end up doing with that student?
Yeah, the backstory to that is I had a student once where the actual assignment was they were given a quote from the social scientist Alfredo Pareto. He was an Italian sociologist back in the early 20th century. And they had to analyze the quote and determine whether they agreed with what Pareto was saying or not. And I had actually written an essay that is published online somewhere about Pareto, where I cited that quote among other things. And anyway, I'm reading over the students' papers, and I'm reading this one student's paper, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. This is unusually good for a student at this level. And then I started thinking, well, some of this is familiar. It's like, where have I seen this? And then it finally dawned on me, oh, I wrote this. This. And I'm like, so she must have like Googled Pareto and found something that I wrote online, and not knowing that it's the same person, that same author. So yeah, I mean, I commended her on her use of sources. I said, you've cited very, very good sources. Obviously, the sources you've consulted are quite good, and I'm impressed with your choice of source material.
And you did not fail her, you did not refer her to the dean. How come?
Well, I mean, number one, who cares? And number two, who has time for that? I mean, it's you don't get paid any extra for that as an instructor. I mean, I was working as an adjunct, and adjuncts tend to be nickel and dimed, so you're not getting paid a lot of money. And the thing is, if you bring out students up on charges of plagiarism, you've got to go through a whole process of, you got to document it, obviously, and then you've got to consult the dean, and then you've got to meet with the student, and yada yada. And who cares? I mean, who has time for that? I mean, I'd rather sit in my reclining chair and drink soda. Not interested.
Well, are you the oddball, or do you think most of your colleagues would handle the situation just like that?
I wouldn't venture to guess what the different variations in terms of scale of attitudes are. There are some academics who take this kind of stuff very seriously. There are two main categories, usually older academics who are old school, that they came up through the era where, no, you don't do that. You do not plagiarize. You do not cheat. Right. These are usually academics that are elderly people now, and they've been teaching, since before college became like high school. And then you also have a lot of younger academics who have what I call an educationist ideology. They really believe still in education as an end unto themselves. I mean, for some of these people, the university system is like their religion. It's like their church. It's often these folks are heavily into activism as well. Like they're very into this kind of social justice-y activism. I'm not saying everybody with that viewpoint has this view of academia, but I've noticed there's an overlap there. So sometimes you have these younger academics that are true believers in education, and then you have the old ones who are old school. But the issue there, though, is that, like I said, increasingly more and more colleges and universities are using adjunct faculty. And adjunct faculty does not get paid that well. It's not like you're a tenured professor with 3 months of summer vacation and all that kind of stuff. So that disincentivizes academics to bother with all of this stuff. There have certainly been times when students have turned in material that I told them they had to redo. Like one example was a student who simply cut and pasted a Wikipedia article onto a Word doc, and that was her paper. And she didn't even bother to take out the links and the footnotes, and that kind of stuff. I mean, it basically, you could look at it and tell this is a Wikipedia document. And I told her, I said, number one, Wikipedia is not a valid source. And number two, you can't just cut and paste stuff off the internet. You've got to actually, at bare minimum, rewrite it in your own words. That's one example. I as far as other incidents I've had, I had a student once who turned in a paper that was actually his girlfriend's paper that she had done for my class the previous semester, and he didn't even bother to change her name. So, and I gave that back to him, and I said, look, if you're going to cheat, you got to try harder than that. I mean, come on, I mean, I should fail you just for your being a crummy cheater. Forget the quality of your work.
And John, have you seen cases like this where a student is obviously asking for it, and then they come to us and they're doing everything wrong? What do you do to help them? They can't send meaningful instructions. They don't know what they're doing. And somehow we need them to get an A. Where do we even begin?
Yeah, well, I've seen all spectrums. I've seen where they are ready to attend a disciplinary meeting and they think they're done for. I've seen it where they're just initially scared, thinking that they're going to get in trouble for turning in something that, you know, is going to be likely seen as plagiarism. Then we've seen it from the beginning where they haven't even used the service yet and they haven't even gotten any help writing their papers, but they're already scared because they think, well, this is not something I've ever done. You know, they come with that story. I've never done this, but I'm overwhelmed. I've got a baby on the way. I'm working 2 jobs, whatever the case may be. So they're all different stories, and it always is going to depend on the instructor, and you don't know their mentality. They could be, like he said, one of the activists who think if you're cheating in school, you're cheating society, you're cheating climate change and racial justice, and because all of this is tied into education, and if you're diminishing your education, you're diminishing all of our collective goal of saving the world for future generations. There's other ones that don't give a shit. I had a professor in college that wanted a 5-page roughly paper, and you'd print out 5 pages and he'd put a check mark next to each paragraph, and he would never read the paragraphs. So you just don't know, though. That's the thing. You can't really research these people and what they're going to do. So your best course of action is to actually just do it right, because otherwise you're taking a risk that you're going to get the guy or gal that wants to take it all the way to the dean and really wants to make an example out of you. And now you're sitting before a disciplinary board and they're saying, why did you do this? And you don't know how to respond. So best course of action is just do it right. And, you know, if you're going to go an alternative route, go with someone like us who knows how to beat the system, if you will. We know how to avoid detection, and we know how to mold your paper the right way.
Yeah, we show our faces. How many companies do we know of who have a podcast like this? Has anybody here seen anything of this nature elsewhere? I can't think of a single one.
Yeah, I have not. I don't know of any other companies that do anything like this.
Can I make a note real quick on something that John mentioned about, the note that I made is that, you know, back when we all went to school, we had options to choose from. So if I didn't care for the way that a class was being run, or I didn't care for the particular professor or the institution, it was relatively easy for me to bug out and go to a different school or professor, or take a different class. However, recently in higher ed, there has been some downsizing, and so you are kind of limited. You have to take that class with that professor, and you don't have any options. This is actually a really good option because you need the class, you need your degree, you need the job. This works. And I think that that's one big key selling point for this particular organization, is that if people don't have access to this type of thing, they don't have access to the classes that they need, they don't have access to other options, this is one option. It gets you through that class, keeps you on track for graduating, keeps you on track for getting the job that you're looking for. I think that's a really key point.
Now, Mary, although you are an educator, you're not an educationist in Keith's language. That you don't believe that somebody who cheats through your class is going to drown the planet. That does not make this person racist or sexist. I guess it's just not your point of view. What do you think is wrong with this point of view, and where does it come from? How common are these kinds of people around you?
I don't see that kind of stuff around here. We, in the schools that I worked at, people are, they don't really think like that, but, I can see where that that idea comes from. I would argue that that's definitely more common in bigger cities and places where that hive mindset kind of takes over in the public school systems and the higher ed systems. In smaller areas, we don't really think like that. But my philosophy on education is I very much want to know what students know. I know Keith has mentioned this before too. I very much want to know what the students know. So that's how I view education. So it doesn't make me an educationist. I just genuinely want to know what the students actually know. If they can tell me in another way, then that's how I teach. That maybe isn't the accepted model in education.
And despite all the problems that we're seeing with education, nonetheless, going to college is a safe bet for most people. You see, no matter how you slice it, the data are clear that people who have advanced degrees generally make more money. Now, you're not going to make more money just because you have degrees. It's an add-on. It's a plus one. It's a supplement. But it's still, just not going to college is not an option for so many people. You see that if everybody's standing up in the theater to see the stage and you choose to remain seated, well, you're not going to be able to see anything. Now we have to stand on top of a chair to see something. And progressive credentialism is just reality. That you need these degrees, you need these credentials, especially if you're in the public sector employment. So it sounds like most people just don't really have a choice. So in this day and age, you need a degree, maybe even a master's degree, and period. Isn't that correct?
That's what I see, that it makes a huge difference to have that degree just to get a paycheck.
No, Keith,
sector.
You've been working in restaurants, stores, before you got your degree. You got your bachelor's degree in your 30s, master's degree in your 40s. How has that changed your life for the better? That now you have 2 master's degrees.
I work less and make as much or more money. I mean, that's the bottom line.
And that's evidence of how you put that education to use. Now, John, what's your take on that? What you have a degree in what now? Public administration, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, my path was kind of different because I worked one job in early 2000s when I was finishing school, and since then I've done this. So I wouldn't really say it applied in my case as far as the degree goes. This is always something I was doing, though, ever since grade school. I had a lot of African friends in grade school, and they'd need help with their homework in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, so I'd help them then. Same friends, moving into high school, I'd help them, and now I'm helping friends of friends and friends and friends. So this was always kind of what I did. I got the degree because that was the right thing to do, I thought, and it was. It's always something to fall back on if I need to. I could say, hey, I've got, my degree in public administration. I could probably find my way into a job in public administration in some capacity. But my pathway was different, but I do not regret at all actually gaining the degree and going through the whole college experience, because it's something I wish I embraced more when I had the opportunity, when I was still in my late teens, early 20s, because I think I kind of skipped over a lot that I could have engaged when I was there. I could have done more to kind of enjoy the whole experience. And we get so focused at that age on the tasks, like, oh my God, a test, or oh my God, a paper, and we forget about what we should be enjoying during that time, which is really learning and growing. And I think that goes back to what we can help out with, is putting aside the remedial tasks and letting our clients focus on what they should be focusing on, which is finding out what they want to do later and doing that now. So they can actually enjoy the entire experience. Like, I wish I had done more. I mean, I'm happy with where I am now, but my pathway could have changed if I embraced college a little more back then.
That is definitely one thing I've noticed, is the increase in more of the busy work, like you kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of busy work. And, that's one thing that maybe Keith can attest to, that if you're a very busy professor or you're an adjunct and you're trying to do too many things at once, yeah, you might assign something that's more along the lines of busy work, where you just put check marks by the paragraph or check marks on the pages, like, yep, they met the requirement, it's 8 pages, we're done. So I could see that definitely, those things tying together. And I very much like your argument that for people that enjoy learning, or that want to focus on their career afterwards, or just enjoying the experience of figuring out who they are, I think that that's a very important piece, to just get rid of the busy work, get rid of the stuff that you don't need to do, the stuff that isn't applicable to your job, to your future.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This was a very enlightening conversation, and we look forward to seeing all of you soon.
All right.